There are moments in life when the veil between the seen and the unseen grows thin, when the soul begins to recognize that this world is not the final destination. A deep knowing arises, not from the mind, but from within, revealing glimpses of a greater reality, one where eternity is not a distant dream, but a present certainty. To those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, these signs are unmistakable. They are not flashes of coincidence, but confirmations of a truth that has always been. There is a moment in life when the things that once held meaning begin to fade. The desires that once consumed the mind lose their grip, and a quiet realization takes root. It is not a sudden change, nor is it forced. It happens naturally, like the unfolding of a flower in the warmth of the morning sun. What was once so important, the ambitions, the successes, the endless chase for validation, now seem like shadows, illusions that never truly satisfied. A longing begins to stir, not for more of what the world offers, but for something deeper, something eternal. This shift is subtle at first, almost imperceptible. The habits of the past remain for a while, lingering like echoes of an old song. But there is no longer the same attachment to them. The things that once brought pleasure no longer hold the same power. The distractions that once filled the mind now feel empty. And in this space, something new emerges. A stillness, a peace that does not come from circumstances, but from within. The restlessness that once drove every action begins to settle. The need to prove, to grasp, to control dissolves, and in its place, a quiet knowing arises. There is no fear in this transformation. Though the mind may not fully understand it, the soul recognizes it. It is as though a weight has been lifted, as though an invisible burden has been set down. The need to chase fades because there is nothing left to chase. The striving stops because there is nothing left to earn. What once felt like loss is now seen as liberation. The attachments that once ruled the heart were never meant to stay, and their departure makes way for something far greater. What was once seen as important, recognition, wealth, approval, now feels like dust in the wind. Not because they are bad, but because they were never the source of true fulfillment. There is nothing wrong with success, with comfort, with the pleasures of life. But when the heart no longer clings to them, when they are no longer the foundation upon which identity is built, a freedom is found that cannot be shaken. This is not a denial of the world, nor is it a rejection of life. It is simply the realization that the world is not all there is. The treasures it offers are temporary, fleeting, and when they fade, they leave nothing behind. But there is something that does not fade, something that does not change, something that remains when all else is gone. And it is this that now calls the soul forward. The hunger that once sought to be filled by things outside of oneself is now being satisfied by something far greater. There is no longer the need to prove anything to anyone, no longer the desire to be seen, to be admired, to be held in high regard. None of these things matter anymore. What is real, what is true, is not found in the eyes of others. It is not found in achievements, in status, in possessions. It is found in the quiet stillness of the heart, in the place where the noise of the world can no longer reach. This shift is not something that can be taught, nor is it something that can be forced. It happens as naturally as the tide returning to the shore. It is a return, a homecoming, a remembrance of something that was always there. The illusions fall away, and what remains is what has always been. There is nothing to fear in this transformation. Though it may feel like a loss at first, it is the greatest gain. What is being stripped away was never real to begin with. What is being left behind was never meant to stay. And what is being revealed, this deep, unshakable peace, was always waiting just beneath the surface. Nothing is missing, nothing has been taken. In fact, for the first time, everything is complete. The longing is no longer for more, but for depth. The search is no longer for things, but for truth. And in this realization, there is rest, there is peace. There is a knowing that nothing is lacking and nothing is needed. Because all that is real, all that is eternal, all that truly matters was never outside of you to begin with. There is a force guiding every step, a presence, unseen yet undeniable. To those who have eyes to see, it is everywhere. It moves through the smallest details, through the so-called coincidences that are anything but random. There comes a moment when the illusion of chance begins to fade, and in its place a pattern emerges, a perfect design, carefully woven, leading in ways the mind could never have planned. What once seemed disconnected now reveals itself as part of a greater whole. The doors that opened, the paths that shifted, the delays that once felt like obstacles, all of it was orchestrated, all of it necessary. The mind, conditioned by fear, resists this truth. It believes it must fight for what it wants, that it must struggle and force things into place. But those who have awakened to the deeper reality know otherwise. They see that nothing ever truly happens by accident. The meeting of the right person at the right time, the sudden change in direction, the words that appear just when they are needed most, these are not random. They are signs. Signs that something greater is at work, something that does not operate on human timelines, but on divine order. To live in awareness of this guidance is to no longer fight against life. It is to stop pushing, to stop forcing, to stop believing that things must happen in a certain way or at a certain time. It is to trust that when a door does not open, it is because it was never meant to. When something is removed, it is because it was never yours to keep. When something shifts unexpectedly, it is because you were always meant to go in another direction. There is no longer a need to panic when things do not go as planned, because the plan was never yours to control. The disappointments that once felt like failures now reveal themselves as blessings. The delays that once felt frustrating now feel like protection. The so-called wrong turns now seem like redirections to something far greater. And when this truth is accepted, there is peace, a deep, unshakable peace that no longer relies on external circumstances. The moments of uncertainty are no longer feared because they are no longer seen as voids. They are transitions. They are spaces where the next step is forming, where something greater is being arranged. In these moments, there is no longer the need to force an answer, to demand clarity before it's time. There is only trust. And in that trust, life begins to flow effortlessly. The right people appear without effort. The right opportunities present themselves without struggle. The right words arrive without seeking. And with this trust comes something even greater, a love that surpasses all understanding, a love that no longer depends on anything outside of itself, a love that does not waver with circumstance, that does not change with conditions. It is not the love the world speaks of, fragile and fleeting. It is the love that gives without expectation, that forgives without hesitation, that sees the divine in others, even when they cannot see it in themselves. This love does not arise from effort. It is not something one tries to feel. It is simply what remains when fear dissolves, when the need for control disappears, when the illusions of separation fade. Love is what is left. It is not something gained, but something revealed, something that was always there, waiting beneath the noise of the mind. To walk in this love is to walk in truth. It is to look upon others and see no enemies, no strangers, no division. It is to see beyond appearances, beyond faults, beyond the temporary masks of this world. It is to recognize that all are connected, that all are moving toward the same light, even if they do not yet see it. And with this love comes freedom, no longer bound by the opinions of others, no longer weighed down by resentment, no longer trapped in the endless cycle of seeking validation. There is nothing to prove, nothing to defend, nothing to protect. The heart is light because it carries no burdens. The soul is free because it holds no attachments. And in this freedom, life unfolds effortlessly. There is no longer the need to chase, no longer the need to force. What is meant will come because it was always meant to. What is not meant will fall away because it was never yours to hold. And through it all, the unseen hand continues to guide, leading gently, silently, unmistakably, toward the only destination that was ever real. There comes a moment when the illusions of the world begin to fade, when the things once pursued with such urgency no longer hold the same weight. What was once considered important, status, recognition, possessions, now feels distant, as though it belonged to another lifetime. A quiet transformation takes place, not through effort, but through awakening. The heart begins to release what it once clung to so tightly, and in doing so, discovers something far greater. There is no fear in this release, no sense of loss. Instead, there is freedom, a lightness that was previously unknown. It is as though an unseen hand has removed the burdens that were never meant to be carried. The struggle that once seemed necessary, the endless striving, the need to prove, the desire to control, dissolves. What remains is a deep and abiding peace, one that does not shift with circumstances, one that does not rely on anything external. This peace is not fragile, not fleeting. It is not the kind the world gives, which comes and goes with the changing tides of fortune. This peace is unshakable, because it comes from knowing that nothing real can be lost, and nothing unreal was ever worth holding on to. With this peace comes the realization that nothing happens by chance. The mind may have once believed in randomness, in luck, in coincidence, but now patterns emerge where once there was only chaos. The so-called setbacks, the delays, the closed doors, none of it was ever punishment. Every event, every shift, every unexpected turn was leading to this moment, to this awareness. There was never a time when life was not being divinely orchestrated. Even in the moments of pain, even in the times of uncertainty, there was always a purpose. And now, looking back, it is clear there was never a single step taken alone. To resist this guidance is to remain in struggle, to insist on one's own way, to fight against the unfolding plan is to create unnecessary suffering. But the moment resistance ceases, the moment trust replaces fear, life begins to flow effortlessly. What is meant to be will arrive without force. What is not meant will fall away without resistance. There is no need to chase, no need to grasp, no need to cling. The unseen hand moves everything into place at the perfect time. What seemed like a delay was never a delay, it was preparation. What seemed like a loss was never a loss, it was redirection. And in accepting this truth, all struggle ends. And with struggle gone, something else takes its place. A love so deep, so unconditional, that it can no longer be confined to one person, one moment, one relationship. This love is not something created by effort. It is not a feeling that comes and goes. It is not dependent on being received or reciprocated. It simply is. It flows freely, effortlessly, without limitation. It sees beyond appearances, beyond faults, beyond the temporary roles people play in this world. It recognizes the divine in all, even in those who do not yet recognize it in themselves. There is no judgment in this love, no desire to change others, no need to fix, no impulse to control. It allows all to be as they are, knowing that each is on their own path, moving toward the same light, even if they do not yet see it. And in this knowing, there is no longer resentment, no longer division, no longer the illusion of separation. The heart no longer carries the weight of past hurts, no longer holds on to old wounds. Forgiveness is no longer an effort, it is the natural state of one who has awakened.
And with this love comes absolute freedom, a freedom so profound that nothing can disturb it. No opinion can shake it. No event can diminish it. It is not bound by circumstances, nor is it dictated by external conditions. It is the freedom of one who knows that they lack nothing, that they need nothing, that they are already whole. And in this wholeness, life unfolds with ease. What is meant will come because it was always meant to. What is not meant will go because it was never meant to stay. There is no anxiety, no fear, no need to control. The path is clear, not because it was forced into being, because it was always there, waiting to be seen. The unseen hand continues to guide, as it always has, leading gently, silently, unmistakably toward the only destination that was ever real. There is a moment in life when the veil lifts, when the distractions of the world no longer hold power, and what once seemed urgent fades into insignificance. It is not an event that forces this change, but a quiet realization, a whisper from within that has always been speaking. The world has taught that struggle is necessary, that effort and force are required to shape one's destiny. But there comes a time when struggle is no longer appealing, when the constant effort to control and manipulate outcomes reveals itself as futile. It is in that moment that a greater truth begins to emerge, one that was always there, waiting to be recognized. To awaken to this truth is to understand that nothing real can be taken away, and nothing unreal was ever worth holding on to. The disappointments that once seemed unfair, the delays that once felt unbearable, the doors that refused to open, all of it was necessary. The mind resists this at first, for it clings to its own plans, its own ideas of how things should be. But the deeper awareness knows that there is something greater at work, something that does not operate according to human timelines or logic. Every obstacle was not a punishment, but a redirection. Every so-called failure was not a loss, but a lesson. And in seeing this, all resentment fades. There is no longer a need to question why things did not happen as expected. The understanding comes that they were never meant to. To trust in this is to finally be at peace. It is to no longer wake up with anxiety, wondering if things will go according to plan. It is to no longer fear the unknown, for what is unknown to the mind is fully known to the deeper self. There is no longer the need to chase, to grasp, to cling to what was never meant to be held. What is meant will come effortlessly. What is not meant will fall away gracefully. There is no force, no desperation, no struggle. Life begins to unfold, not as a series of problems to solve, but as a perfect design revealing itself in divine timing. With this awareness, all that once seemed burdensome is released. The weight of needing to control, the fear of losing what was never truly possessed, the exhaustion of trying to shape reality through force, all of it disappears. And in its place is freedom, a lightness that was always meant to be. The heart no longer carries unnecessary burdens, no longer clings to what was never meant to stay. Forgiveness becomes natural because there is nothing left to hold on to. The past is no longer seen as something to regret, but as something that led to this very moment. And in that recognition, there is nothing but gratitude. This freedom brings a love unlike any known before. A love that does not waver, that does not depend on circumstances, that does not require anything in return. It is not the love the world speaks of, which is fragile and fleeting, given only when conditions are met. It is a love that simply is, a love that flows freely because it knows there is no lack. It is not something that must be created, but something that is uncovered when fear is removed. The illusions of separation dissolve, and in their place, oneness is seen. There are no enemies, no strangers, no division. All are part of the same whole, moving toward the same light, even if they do not yet realize it. To live in this love is to walk through the world unshaken. It is to move with certainty, not because of control, but because of trust. The storms of life no longer create fear, for they are seen as temporary, as passing events that hold no real power. Nothing external can disturb the inner peace that has been found. No circumstance can take away what is eternal. The heart is unburdened, the mind is clear, and life moves with grace. And so all striving ceases. The need to prove, the need to seek validation, the need to make things happen, it all fades. What was meant will always find a way. What is not meant will never be forced into being. And in that understanding, all that is left is a quiet, unshakable joy. The unseen hand continues to guide, as it always has, leading with perfect precision toward the only destination that was ever real. There comes a moment when all questioning ceases, when the struggle to understand is replaced by a quiet knowing. Life was never meant to be a battle, nor were its challenges meant to break you. Every delay, every redirection, every unanswered prayer was not a denial, but a sign that something greater was unfolding. What once seemed like an obstacle was, in truth, a doorway, one that could only be seen when resistance was set aside. To trust in this is to walk in freedom, no longer weighed down by fear, no longer caught in the illusion of control. You move with confidence, not because you have figured everything out, but because you no longer need to. The unseen hand has always been guiding, shaping, preparing. Nothing real has ever been lost, and nothing true will ever pass you by. What is meant for you cannot be taken, and what is not meant for you will never bring peace. And so all that is left is surrender. And not the kind the world sees as weakness, but the kind that brings strength beyond measure. It is in this surrender that life begins to flow, not as something to be conquered, but as something to be received. The weight is lifted, the fear is gone, and in its place is a quiet certainty. All is unfolding exactly as it should. The path was never yours to force. It was always being revealed, one step at a time.